The ship fell from the sky like a dying star. It tore through the clouds above Montana on the coldest night of the year. Fire and smoke trailed behind it as it dropped lower and lower. The few people who saw it thought it was a meteor. They did not know that inside the burning vessel, a family was fighting to survive. The Dracorian diplomatic ship had traveled across half the galaxy. It carried Ambassador Kethoran, his wife Silamai, and their young daughter, Kirith. They were on their way to a council meeting on the other side of human space. The Dracorians were an old and proud species. They looked like the dragons from human stories, with scales that shimmered like jewels, wings that could carry them through the air, and the ability to breathe fire from their mouths. They had lived among the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make tools. But none of that mattered now. The engine had failed. Something had gone terribly wrong, and the ship was falling. Kethoran held his daughter tight as the ship shook and screamed around them. Silamai was trying to reach the emergency pods. There were only seconds left. "Take her," Kethoran said to his wife. His voice was calm even as death approached. "Get her to the pod. Save our child." Silamai grabbed Kirith and ran. The little Dracorian was only 6 years old in human terms. Her scales were a soft purple color, and her wings were still too small to let her fly. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that her mother was crying, and her father was not coming with them. "Mama," Kirith said. "Where is Papa?" "He is right behind us," Silamai lied. She pushed her daughter into the small emergency pod. "You must be brave now, little flame. You must be so brave." The pod door closed. Through the small window, Kirith saw her mother's face one last time. Then the pod launched, shooting away from the ship just as it exploded in a ball of fire. The pod hit the ground hard. It rolled and bounced across the frozen earth before finally stopping in a field of snow. Inside, Kirith was hurt. She had a deep cut on her side that bled green blood. Her left wing was bent at a wrong angle, broken and useless. Her head was spinning, and she could barely see. But she was alive. She pushed open the pod door and fell out into the snow. The cold hit her like a wall. Dracorians were cold-blooded creatures. They needed warmth to survive. The freezing Montana winter was like poison to her small body. She could feel her limbs growing stiff and slow. Her thoughts became cloudy. She looked up at the sky. She could see the smoke and fire where her ship had been. Her parents were gone. She was alone. Kirith wanted to cry. She wanted to curl up in the snow and wait for death to take her. But somewhere deep inside her, a small voice spoke. It was her father's voice, saying the words he had told her so many times before. A Dracorian never gives up. We are the children of fire. We burn until the very end. She forced herself to stand. Her legs shook. Her broken wing dragged in the snow behind her. But she stood in the distance. She could see lights. Small, flickering lights that meant warmth and shelter. A town. If she could reach it, she might survive. She might find someone to help her. She began to walk. Every step was agony. The cold cut through her scales like knives. Her wound kept bleeding, leaving a trail of green drops in the white snow. She fell many times. Each time, she got back up. Each time, she kept walking toward the lights. It took her almost 2 hours to reach the edge of the town. By then, she could barely feel her body. Her vision was blurry. She was shaking so hard that her teeth made clicking sounds. But she had made it. She had reached the humans. The town was called Ridgewood. It was a small place with only a few thousand people. Most of them had never seen an alien in their lives. They had heard stories, of course. Everyone knew that Earth was part of something called the Galactic Assembly. Everyone knew that strange creatures lived among the stars. But knowing something and seeing it were two very different things. Kira stumbled down the main street. The shops were closed. The roads were empty. It was late at night, and everyone was inside their warm homes. Hiding from the cold, she saw a house with lights in the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney. Warmth. Safety. She walked to the front door and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack, and a human face appeared. It was a man with gray hair and suspicious eyes. He looked at Kira, and his face turned pale. "What the hell?" he said. "Please," Kira said. Her voice was weak and broken. She had learned some human words from her father. "Please help. Cold. Hurt." The man stared at her. She could see the fear in his eyes. She was a monster to him, a creature from his nightmares. He did not see a wounded child. He saw a threat. "Get away from here," he said. "Go on, get." He slammed the door in her face. Kira stood there for a moment, too shocked to move. Then she turned and walked to the next house. She knocked again. This time, a woman answered. She screamed when she saw Kira, and closed the door even faster than the first man. The next house did not even open their door. They just shouted at her through the window, telling her to leave or they would call the sheriff. Kira kept walking. She kept knocking. Door after door after door. And every single one closed in her face. Some people threw things at her. Some threatened her with weapons. Some just stared with cold, hateful eyes. She was bleeding. She was freezing. She was dying. And no one would help her. She reached the end of the street and fell to her knees. The snow soaked through her scales. She could not feel her tail anymore. She could not feel her feet. The cold was winning. But then she looked up and saw one more light. Far away, at the end of a long dark road, there was a farmhouse. It was the last house before the wilderness. The last chance she had. Kira forced herself to stand one more time. She began to walk toward that distant light. She did not know who lived there. She did not know if they would help her or turn her away like all the others. She only knew that she had to try, because a Dracorian never gives up. She burns until the very end. Daniel Cooper had not slept well in 3 years. Ever since his wife Maria died, the nights had become long and empty. He would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. He would listen to the wind outside and remember the sound of her laughter. He would reach across the bed and find only cold sheets where she used to be. Tonight was no different. He had given up on sleep and was sitting in his old chair by the fireplace. A photo album lay open on his lap. Pictures of Maria smiled up at him. Maria on their wedding day. Maria holding flowers from her garden. Maria laughing at one of his bad jokes. "I miss you," Daniel whispered to the empty room. "I miss you every single day." He was 52 years old. His hair had turned gray. His face had new lines that were not there before she died. He lived alone on the farm that his grandfather had built. He had no children. He had few friends. Most days, he spoke to no one but his dog, an old hound named Buster, who was sleeping by the fire. The wind howled outside. The radio had said this would be the coldest night of the year. Daniel was glad he had enough wood for the fire. He was glad he had nowhere to go. Then Buster lifted his head. His ears went up. He made a small sound in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Daniel asked. Buster stood up and walked to the front door. He sniffed at the gap beneath it. Then he began to whine. Daniel frowned. He set down the photo album and stood up. His old bones cracked and popped. He walked to the door and listened. At first, he heard nothing but the wind. Then, very faintly, he heard something else. A scratching sound, weak and desperate, like something was trying to reach the door. but did not have the strength to knock. Daniel grabbed his coat and opened the door. The cold hit him like a punch in the chest, but he barely noticed it. His eyes were fixed on the small figure lying on his porch. At first, his mind could not understand what he was seeing. It looked like a lizard, but it was the size of a child. It had purple scales that should have been shiny, but were now dull and covered in frost. It had wings small and broken. It had a tail that was not moving, and it was bleeding green blood all over his wooden porch. For a moment, Daniel just stood there. He had seen aliens on the television. He knew they existed, but he had never seen one in real life, and he had certainly never seen one dying on his doorstep. The creature opened its eyes. They were golden like drops of honey. They looked up at Daniel with fear and hope and desperation. "Please," it whispered. Its voice was small and broken. A child's voice. "Please, cold, hurt, help." Daniel did not think about what this creature was. He did not think about whether it was dangerous. He did not think about what the neighbors would say or what the sheriff would do. He saw a child. A wounded, freezing, dying child. And that was all that mattered. He bent down and picked her up. She weighed almost nothing. Her scales were like ice against his hands. He could feel her shaking, a terrible trembling that seemed to come from deep inside her. "It's okay," he said softly. "I've got you. You're safe now." He carried her inside and kicked the door closed behind him. Buster sniffed at the strange creature, but did not bark. Dogs know things that humans do not. Buster knew this was not a threat. This was something that needed help. Daniel set her down on the rug in front of the fireplace. He grabbed every blanket he could find and wrapped them around her small body. He moved her closer to the fire, as close as he could without burning her. She was still shaking. Her breathing was shallow and fast. The wound on her side was bad, a deep gash that had bled too much. Her wing was bent at an angle that made Daniel's stomach turn. "Hold on, little one," Daniel said. "Just hold on." He ran to the bathroom and grabbed his first aid kit. It was meant for humans, not aliens, but it was all he had. He cleaned the wound as gently as he could. The creature, the child, cried out in pain. The sound broke his heart. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry, but I have to do this. I have to stop the bleeding." He bandaged the wound with clean white cloth. He did not know how to fix the broken wing, so he just tried to keep it still. He wrapped it carefully against her body so it would not move. Through it all, the child watched him. Her golden eyes followed his every move. She did not try to run. She did not try to fight. She just lay there and let him help her. When he was done, Daniel sat back and let out a long breath. The child's shaking had slowed down a little. Her breathing was still fast, but not as bad as before. The fire crackled and popped, filling the room with warmth. "You're going to be okay," Daniel said. He did not know if she understood him. He did not know if his words meant anything to her. But he said them anyway. "You're going to be okay. I promise." The child looked at him. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. But somewhere in those golden depths, he saw something that might have been trust. "Dan." "Yao," she said, reading the name on his jacket. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel." "That's right," he said with a small smile. "My name is Daniel. What's your name?" "Kira." "Eth," she said. "Kirath." "Kirath," Daniel repeated. "That's a beautiful name. Now you rest, Kirath. You're safe here. Nothing is going to hurt you." She closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep. Daniel did not move. He sat beside her on the floor, watching her breathe. Outside, the wind continued to howl. The cold continued to bite. But inside this small farmhouse, there was warmth. There was safety. There was a wounded child who had finally found someone willing to help her. Daniel stayed awake all night. He added wood to the fire. He checked her bandages. He made sure she kept breathing. Buster lay down beside her, sharing his warmth with this strange creature from the stars. As the first light of dawn began to show through the windows, Daniel heard the sound of a car coming up his driveway. He looked out and saw the sheriff's truck. He stood up slowly. He looked down at Kirith, still sleeping peacefully by the fire. Then he walked to the front door and waited. Sheriff Greg Holden stepped out of his truck. He was a big man with a hard face. He had been sheriff of Ridgewood for 15 years, and he did not like surprises. "Daniel," he called out, "I know you have it. Half the town called me last night. They said some kind of monster was going door to door. I followed the blood trail here." Daniel opened his front door and stood in the doorway. He did not step aside. He did not let the sheriff see inside. "She's not a monster," Daniel said. "She's a child. It's an alien," the sheriff said. "It could be dangerous. I need to take it in for everyone's safety." "Her name is Kirith," Daniel said. "She's hurt and scared and alone. She's not going anywhere." The sheriff's eyes went hard. "Daniel, don't make this difficult. She stays with me, Greg. That's final." The two men stared at each other. The cold wind blew between them. Neither one moved. Finally, the sheriff shook his head. "You're making a mistake, Daniel." "A big mistake." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But she stays." He closed the door and went back to sit beside the sleeping child. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 days passed. Kira slept for most of the first day. Her body was fighting to heal itself, fighting to recover from the cold and the wounds and the terrible grief of losing her parents. Daniel stayed by her side the whole time. He barely ate. He barely slept. He just watched over her like a guardian angel with gray hair and tired eyes. On the second day, she woke up. At first, she was terrified. She opened her golden eyes and did not know where she was. She tried to stand, tried to run, but her body was too weak. She fell back onto the blankets and let out a cry of fear. "Easy, easy," Daniel said. He kept his voice soft and gentle. "You're safe, Kirith. Remember me?" "Daniel, I helped you." She looked at him. For a long moment, she just stared. Then, slowly, the fear in her eyes faded. She remembered. This was the human who had opened his door. This was the one who had wrapped her in blankets and cleaned her wounds. This was the one who had not turned her away. "Danielle," she whispered. "That's right," he said with a warm smile. "That's me. Are you hungry? Can you eat?" She nodded weakly. Daniel brought her warm soup. He had to help her hold the bowl because her hands were still shaking. She drank the soup slowly, and some color returned to her scales. They were not as dull as before. They had a faint shimmer now, like light reflected on water. "Good girl," Daniel said. "You're doing great." On the third day, Kirith was strong enough to sit up. Her wound was healing faster than Daniel had expected. Her scales seemed to have some kind of natural healing ability. The gash on her side was already closing, though it would leave a scar. Her wing was still broken, but it no longer caused her so much pain. She began to talk. Her English was not good, but Daniel was patient. He listened carefully to every word. He asked simple questions and waited for simple answers. Piece by piece, he learned her story. She told him about the ship. She told him about the crash. She told him about her parents, how her mother had put her in the pod, how her father had stayed behind. She told him about walking through the snow, about knocking on doors, about being turned away again and again. When she told him about the people who threw things at her, Daniel's hands became fists. When she told him about the people who threatened to shoot her, his jaw went tight. He felt a cold anger building inside him, an anger at his own kind for being so cruel to a child. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry that happened to you. Not all humans are like that. I promise you." Kirith looked at him with her golden eyes. "You are not like that," she said. "You opened door. You helped." Daniel felt tears building in his eyes. He blinked them away. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Kirith said. She shook her head slowly. "No one else. Only you." That afternoon, Daniel sat with Kirith by the fire and showed her picture books. They were old books that had belonged to his niece many years ago. Books about animals, about farms, about families. Kirith looked at each page with wonder. She had never seen a cow before. She had never seen a horse. She pointed at each picture and asked what it was called. And Daniel told her when they came to a book about dragons. Kirith made a small sound of surprise. "This is me," she said, pointing at the dragon on the page. "Humans know about Dracorians?" Daniel smiled. "We have old stories about creatures like you. We call them dragons. In our stories, they are powerful and wise. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. But the best ones are kind." "I want to be kind dragon," Kirith said. "You already are," Daniel told her. That evening, something strange happened. Kirith was sitting close to the fire, enjoying the warmth, when she suddenly sneezed. A small burst of flame shot from her mouth. It was not big, just a little puff of fire, but it surprised Daniel so much that he jumped back in his chair. Kirith looked terrified. Sorry, she cried. "I not mean to." "Please do not be angry." Daniel stared at her for a moment. Then he started to laugh. It was a real laugh, a deep laugh that came from his belly. He had not laughed like that in 3 years. "That was amazing." He said, "You can breathe fire? That's incredible." Kirith blinked at him. She had expected him to be scared. She had expected him to push her away. Instead, he was smiling. He was laughing. He was not afraid of her at all. "You, not scared?" she asked. "Scared? Why would I be scared?" That was the coolest thing I've ever seen. A small smile appeared on Kirith's face. It was the first time she had smiled since the crash. It made her whole face light up. It made her golden eyes shine even brighter. "You are a strange human, Danielle," she said. "I'll take that as a compliment," he replied. That night, Kirith had a nightmare. She woke up screaming, crying out for her mother and father. Daniel was by her side in an instant. He held her close, letting her cry into his shoulder. He did not say anything. He just held her and let her feel that she was not alone. "They are gone," Kirith sobbed. "Mama, Papa, gone." "I know," Daniel whispered. "I know, little one. I lost someone too. My wife. Her name was Maria. She died 3 years ago. Sometimes I still cry for her." Kirith looked up at him. Tears were running down her scaled face. "Does the hurt go away?" Daniel thought about the question carefully. He wanted to tell her the truth. "The hurt never goes away completely," he said. "But it gets smaller, and you learn to carry it. You learn to live again. And the people you lost, they stay with you. They stay in your heart forever." Kirith put her small hand on Daniel's chest, right over his heart. "Maria is here?" "Yes," Daniel said. His voice was thick with emotion. "She's right here." "Then my mama and papa are here too," Kirith said, putting her other hand on her own chest. "Right here. Always," Daniel said. "Always and forever." They sat together in the firelight, 2 broken souls holding each other up. Outside, the world was cold and dark and dangerous. But inside this small farmhouse, there was warmth. There was love. There was a family being born from grief and kindness. The next morning, Daniel turned on the news and saw something that made his heart stop. The crashed Dracorian ship had been found. The Galactic Assembly had been contacted. A diplomatic team was on its way to Earth, and they were looking for a missing child. Daniel looked at Kirith, who was playing with Buster on the floor. She was throwing a ball, and the old dog was happily bringing it back to her. She was laughing, actually laughing, for the first time since Daniel had met her. They were coming for her. Her people were coming to take her away. Daniel knew he should be happy. She would be with her own kind. She would be safe. But as he watched her laugh and play, he felt something break inside his chest. He had just found her. And now he was going to lose her. He was going to lose another person he loved. The ships came on the fifth day. Daniel was standing on his porch when he saw them. 3 vessels descended from the sky, each one bigger than his farmhouse. They were silver and smooth, shaped like teardrops, and they moved without making any sound. They landed in his field, crushing the snow beneath them. Kirith was standing beside him. She was wrapped in one of Maria's old coats, the smallest one Daniel could find. Her broken wing was still bandaged against her body, but she was stronger now. She could walk without help. She could eat without shaking. She was healing. "My people," she said quietly. There was something strange in her voice. Not happiness, not relief. Something else. Something like fear. "It's going to be okay," Daniel said. But even as he spoke the words, he was not sure if he believed them. A door opened on the largest ship. Figures stepped out into the snow. They were Dracorians, tall and proud. Their scales were different colors, red and gold and deep blue. Their wings were large and powerful. Their eyes were sharp and cold. One of them walked ahead of the others. He was larger than the rest, with dark red scales and golden markings around his eyes. He wore robes made of some shimmering material that Daniel did not recognize. He looked like a king. He moved like a warrior. Behind him came a human woman in a gray uniform. She had short brown hair and a serious face. She walked quickly to keep up with the Dracorian's long steps. "I am Ambassador Vormrith," the Dracorian said. His voice was deep and powerful. "I am here for my brother's child." "Where is she?" Daniel stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. "She's right here. She's safe." Vormrith's eyes moved to Kirith. Something flickered across his face, something that might have been relief. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold, hard expression. "Kirith," he said. "Come, we are leaving." Kirith did not move. She stayed close to Daniel, her small hand gripping the edge of his coat. Vormrith frowned. "Did you not hear me, child? Come here, now." "Uncle," Kirith said. Her voice was small but clear. "I want to stay." The silence that followed was heavy and cold. Vormrith's eyes widened. The other Dracorians behind him began to whisper among themselves. The human woman, who Daniel guessed was some kind of government official, looked extremely uncomfortable. "Stay?" Vormrith repeated the word like it was something dirty. "Stay here? With these humans?" "Daniel helped me," Kirith said. "He opened his door. He made me warm. He fixed my wounds. He held me when I cried. He is kind. He is a primitive," Vormrith said. His voice was sharp with anger. "His species has barely learned to walk among the stars. They are children compared to us. You cannot stay with a child." Daniel felt his own anger rising. But before he could speak, the human woman stepped forward. "Ambassador, perhaps we should discuss this calmly," she said. "My name is Commander Lydia Grant. I'm the regional liaison for the Galactic Assembly. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone." Vormrith ignored her. He was staring at Daniel now, studying him like a scientist studying an insect. "You," he said. "Human, what did you do to my niece? What trick did you use to make her want to stay?" Daniel met the ambassador's gaze without flinching. No trick, he said. I just treated her like a person, like a child who needed help. That's all. Impossible, Vornreth said. Dracorian children do not bond with outsiders. It takes years to earn their trust. You have had her for 5 days. Maybe that's all she needed, Daniel said. 5 days of kindness. 5 days of being treated like she matters. Maybe that's something she wasn't getting elsewhere. Vornreth's scales seemed to darken with anger. For a moment, Daniel thought the ambassador might attack him. But then Kira stepped between them. Uncle, please, she said. Daniel is good. He's not like the others. The others threw rocks at me. They pointed weapons at me. They called me monster. But Daniel opened his door. He called me by my name. He told me I was safe. She looked up at her uncle with those golden eyes. He reads me books about dragons. He shows me pictures of earth animals. He laughs when I breathe fire. He holds me when I have bad dreams about Mama and Papa. Her voice broke on the last words. Tears began to fall down her scaled face. I miss Mama and Papa so much. But when I am with Danielle, the hurt is not so big. He makes me feel like I have a family again. Vornreth stood very still. His hard expression cracked, just a little. Daniel could see something shifting behind those cold eyes. Pain, grief, and maybe, just maybe, understanding. Take me to where she has been staying, Vornreth said quietly. I wish to see for myself. Daniel nodded. He led the ambassador into his small farmhouse. He watched as Vornreth looked around the modest rooms, the old furniture, the simple decorations. The ambassador's eyes stopped on the blanket nest that Daniel had made for Kirith by the fireplace. They stopped on the picture books scattered on the floor. They stopped on the photo of Maria on the mantel. Who is this? Vornreth asked, pointing at the photo. My wife, Daniel said. She died 3 years ago. You are alone? I was. Until Kirith knocked on my door. Vornreth was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the blanket nest and picked up one of the picture books. It was the one about dragons. She has been reading this? I've been reading it to her, Daniel said. She likes the pictures. Vornreth opened the book. His large claws looked strange, holding something so small and human. He turned the pages slowly, looking at the illustrations of dragons flying through the sky, breathing fire, protecting their homes. We are not like these creatures in your stories, Vornreth said. We are older. We are wiser. We do not concern ourselves with the affairs of lesser species. With all respect, Ambassador, Daniel said, a child doesn't care about any of that. A child just wants to be loved. That's true whether she has scales or skin. Vornreth closed the book. He turned to face Daniel. They stood there, human and Dracorian, looking at each other across a gap of thousands of years and millions of miles. My brother was a proud fool, Vornreth said. He always believed too much in the old ways. He kept his daughter sheltered, protected from outsiders. He taught her that other species were beneath us. He paused. And then, when she needed help the most, it was those other species she had to turn to. And they turned her away. All of them turned her away, except for you. Daniel said nothing. He just waited. Why? Vornreth asked. Why did you help her when your own kind would not? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about Maria, about the love they had shared, about the emptiness that had filled his life after she was gone. He thought about the sound of scratching at his door, about the sight of a broken child on his porch, about the choice that had not felt like a choice at all. Because she was alone, Daniel said simply. Because she was hurt. Because she was just a child who needed help. And because when I looked at her, I didn't see an alien. I just saw someone who deserved a chance. Vornreth was quiet for a very long time. Outside, the wind blew. The fire crackled. Buster lay on the floor, watching them both with wise old eyes. Finally, the ambassador spoke. "What did you do?" he asked quietly, "to earn her trust?" Daniel shrugged. "I just opened my door." Vornroth nodded slowly. He looked down at the picture book in his claws, then back at Daniel. "Perhaps," he said, "there is more to humans than I believed." The tribunal was held 3 days later. A holographic screen was set up in Daniel's living room. It was strange technology, far beyond anything humans had made. The screen showed a great chamber somewhere among the stars, filled with representatives from dozens of different species. There were beings with 4 arms, beings with no arms, beings made of light and shadow. And at the center of it all sat the High Council of the Galactic Assembly. Daniel stood before the screen with Kirith beside him. Ambassador Vornroth stood nearby, his face unreadable. Commander Grant was there too, along with several other human officials who had arrived from the city. The head of the council was a being that looked like living crystal. Its voice echoed through the room like chimes in the wind. "We are here to decide the fate of the Dracorian child, Kirith," it said. "Her parents are dead. Her only living relative is Ambassador Vornroth. By Dracorian law and galactic custom, she should return to her people. However, the ambassador has requested that we consider an alternative arrangement." Whispers filled the chamber. The representatives looked at each other with surprise. "The ambassador wishes to invoke an ancient Dracorian rite," the crystal being continued. "The bond of fire. This rite allows a Dracorian child to be formally adopted by a member of another species, if that individual is proven worthy through acts of courage, kindness, and honor." More whispers. Some of the representatives looked shocked. Others looked angry. A tall being with blue skin and 6 eyes stood up. "This is absurd," it said. "Humans are one of the youngest species in the galaxy. They have barely mastered space travel. They are violent, primitive, and short-lived. To give one of them custody of a Dracorian child would be an insult to the Dracorian people." "I agree," said another representative, this one looking like a mass of floating tentacles. "Humans cannot be trusted with such responsibility. They cannot even stop fighting among themselves." Daniel felt his heart sinking. He looked at Kirith, who was holding his hand tightly. Her golden eyes were filled with fear. She understood what was happening. She understood that these powerful beings were trying to take her away from him. "May I speak?" Daniel asked. The chamber went quiet. Every eye, every sensor, every attention focused on him. "You may," the crystal being said. "The human Daniel Cooper is granted permission to address the council." Daniel took a deep breath. He was just a farmer from Montana. He had never spoken to anyone more important than the mayor of Ridgewood. And now he was standing before the rulers of the galaxy, trying to convince them to let him keep a child who had fallen from the stars. "I don't know anything about your laws," he began. His voice was rough and simple. "I don't know anything about your customs or your history. I'm just a man who lives alone on a farm. I'm not special. I'm not important. I'm nobody." He paused. He looked down at Kirith. She looked back up at him with complete trust in her eyes. "But 5 days ago," he continued, "a scared and wounded child knocked on my door. She was freezing to death. She was bleeding. She had been turned away by everyone she asked for help. And when I opened my door and saw her lying there, I didn't see an alien. I didn't see a threat. I didn't see something strange or scary. I just saw a child who needed help." His voice grew stronger. "I carried her inside. I wrapped her in blankets. I cleaned her wounds. I sat with her through the night. And when she woke up crying from nightmares about her parents, I held her and told her it was going to be okay." He looked at the council. "You say humans are primitive. You say we're violent and short-lived. Maybe that's true. But we also know what it means to love someone. We know what it means to protect someone who can't protect themselves. We know what it means to open our door when someone is lost in the cold. He squeezed Kirith's hand. I can't give her a palace. I can't give her advanced technology or fancy education. But I can give her a home. I can give her warmth and safety and kindness. I can give her someone who will always be there for her, no matter what. And I think, in the end, that's what any child needs. Human or Dracorian or anything else. He stopped speaking. The silence in the chamber was complete. Then, slowly, Ambassador Vormrith stepped forward. I have spent my life believing that Dracorians were superior to all other species, he said. I looked down on humans as primitives who were barely worth our attention. But this human has shown me something that I never expected to see. He looked at Daniel with something like respect in his eyes. When my brother's ship crashed, it was humans who my niece turned to for help. And most of them turned her away. They let fear control them. They saw something different and called it a monster. But one human did not. One human saw past the scales and the wings and the strangeness. One human saw a child. He turned to face the council. The bond of fire is not given lightly. It requires proof that the adoptive parent is worthy. It requires acts of courage, kindness, and honor. Daniel Cooper has shown all three. He had the courage to take in a stranger when his own people would not. He had the kindness to heal her wounds and ease her grief. And he had the honor to stand before this council and speak from his heart. Vormrith raised his hand and fire danced across his claws. As the child's only living blood relative, I invoke the bond of fire. I declare Daniel Cooper worthy to be the guardian of Kirith, daughter of Catherine and Silamai of the House of Crimson Wings. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted and argued. The crystal being called for order. But through it all, Kirith just looked up at Daniel with tears in her eyes. Daniel, she whispered, does this mean I can stay? I don't know yet, Daniel whispered back. But no matter what they decide, you'll always be my family. The crystal being raised its arms, and the chamber fell silent. The council will vote, it said. All in favor of recognizing the bond of fire between Daniel Cooper and the child Kirith, signal now. Lights began to appear across the chamber. Blue lights for yes. Red lights for no. Daniel watched as the colors spread, his heart pounding in his chest. Blue, red, blue, red, blue, more blue than red. More yes than no. The vote is decided, the crystal being announced. By a margin of 63%, the council recognizes the bond of fire. The child Kirith will remain in the custody of Daniel Cooper, with regular visits from Ambassador Vormrith. Kirith threw her arms around Daniel's waist. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Daniel held her tight, tears streaming down his own face. Thank you, he said to the council. Thank you. The holographic screen faded. The representatives disappeared. And suddenly, it was just Daniel and Kirith standing in his small living room, holding each other like they would never let go. 1 week later, Daniel and Kirith sat on his front porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with orange and pink and gold. The snow had begun to melt, and somewhere in the distance, a bird was singing. Kirith's wing was healing well. The bandages were off now, and she could move it a little. The doctor that Vormrith had sent said she would fly again someday. Buster lay at their feet, snoring contentedly. Danielle? Kirith said, yes? What does family mean? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about Maria, about the love they had shared. He thought about his parents, long gone now. He thought about all the people he had known and lost throughout his life. Family, he said slowly, is the people who love you, the people who take care of you, the people who open their door when you're lost in the cold. Kirith nodded. She leaned against him, her small wing draping over his arm. "Then you are my family," she said. "And I am yours." "That's right," Daniel said. "Forever and always." They sat together as the sun went down. Two souls who had found each other across the vastness of space. A broken man and a broken child, made whole again by the simple act of opening a door. "Thank you, Danielle," Kirith whispered. "Thank you for opening your door." Daniel smiled and pulled her closer. "Thank you for knocking," he said, and together they watched the stars come out, one by one, lighting up the sky like a million distant campfires. Somewhere out there were worlds they had never seen, species they had never met, wonders they could only imagine. But right here, right now, they had everything they needed. They had each other. They had home.